We are here to present our proposed IT project Capstone, which is the paperless queuing system. When we say paperless queuing system, we don't use any paper to get a priority number. Instead, we use smartphones or any kinds of gadget that can queue the process. We base this paperless queuing system on first come first serve. So the first one to generate the IP address of the server and connect it to the Wi-Fi, then the first one to get the IP address. We decided to make this project because the school doesn't have a proper alignment of queuing in terms of the student credential when paying and inquiring their school fees at the cashier area. We see a situation that the school needs an improvement regarding on the crowded lines of the cashier area, and it sounds irritating for the student if they were in a hurry and it consumes time. This project will develop an innovative way of queuing or paperless queuing system. It is designed in organizing queues at every department in school, which is expected to have a large number of students daily. Since we see that the cashier area have a crowded, large number of students, then we focus on the cashier. It is a process of a system that encourages the student to use a smartphone to develop an ease of use device such as queue. Paperless queuing system is a system that the arrivals of the new users are the input and serve the users are the output. In this system, the user have to wait for their turn to be served since usually the numbers of server are outnumbered by the number of waiting users. The system is a web-based and will use Raspberry Pi to generate an IP address and connect to the dedicated router, and the user will connect to the router and ask the Raspberry Pi IP address to generate the process and select the type of queue into the cashier and start the process. If you are in the perimeter of the school, as long as you know the IP address of the server and you connect it to the Wi-Fi, then you can get a priority number and you can queue. The objective of this project is to provide a system which will manage the queuing transaction without paper needed. The process of queuing only happens inside the campus and it is connected at the same network. So since our Raspberry Pi doesn't change the IP address, so every day the IP address are the same. So you don't need to ask every day the IP address as long as you know the IP address of the Raspberry Pi or the server, then you can do the queue as long as you are connected to the dedicated router. To start the configuration, we have the server, which is the Raspberry Pi Model B Plus, and the monitor, HDMI, keyboard, and the power supply. And connect this to the port of the server. To begin the process, we need to reboot the server, and after that, we need to get the IP address of the Raspberry Pi and connect it to the router, which is the PLDT. We need to reboot, go to the terminal, and we need to reboot the server, and after that, we need to get the IP address of the Raspberry Pi. So when we go to the terminal, then we do the reboot to start up our system. Now we get the IP address of the Raspberry Pi, which is our server, and we connected to the Wi-Fi. So this is the dashboard of our system, and so this will explain to get priority number for the users, but for now we will go to the cashier and the admin. So first we will go to the admin, so we need to log in. So this is the admin page. As you can see, we have here priority lane, priority number. And so since we are in the admin page, so the admin will be adding a cashier to begin a query. So add cashier. So we need to add cashier for the admin. Counter number 1. So gender is male, for example, and then submit. And then log out. Sign out for the admin. So now we create the cashier, so we need to log in as cashier. So the name of the cashier is Ireneo Arcenal Jr. Password. So there it is. So name of the cashier Arcenal Jr. and then counter number 1. So as you can see at the monitor, so there is a cashier number 1. So the cashier will be do the query. So we have here priority number, date, time, transaction, and status. So in this priority number, so whoever the first one to queue the process or to generate the process and get the IP address of our server, so the first one to get a priority number, so that's his priority number. And since we have a PWD or person with disability, so we will know if the priority lane will show here the PWD. And also the cashier can add an announcement. For example, we will add an announcement. COVID. So as you can see at the monitor, so the announcement is COVID, just for an example. And now, the cashier will be adding a limit. For example, today, the cashier will limit to, just for an example, 50 users in the morning and then 50 users in the afternoon. But for now, we'll have 2 cashiers since the school have 2 cashiers. So go to the admin. And we will be adding another cashier. So sign out and then log in as cashier. So now we have the name of the cashier Jean and the counter number 2. So as you can see, there are 2 cashiers at the monitor. Since the user know the IP address of the Raspberry Pi and connected to the Wi-Fi, then we will now begin the queue process. So as you can see, get priority number, click priority number. Welcome to ECUC Cashier Queuing System. So there are transactions there, that payments and inquiry. So the user will know the IP address if you will ask to the technical or the cashier what will be the IP address of the Raspberry Pi. Permanent IP address. If you're gonna use another IP, if you're gonna use another dedicated router, then the Raspberry Pi IP address will change. So since we use PLDT Wi-Fi for now, so let's do the queuing. So this this will be the users, so they are using smartphone to queue their process and to get a priority number. So as you can see, payment, so we are all select payments. So we are a normal user, so we are a student, continue, and then continue. And then for example, if there is a PWD, then click the PWD, the yellow color one. So as you can see, the orange color P stands for the payment, and then 001 stands for the first who get the priority number. So since here we have a PWD, so P-001-P, that would be mean a priority a PWD. As you can see at the cashier, so that is P001, which is the payment, P002, and then as you can see there, all the transactions, we have 3 users. So we'll go to the priority lane. As you can see, the PWD is on the priority lane since they are the person with disability. So we'll be the one to queue first. So we all have here the all transaction that has been queried by the cashier. And then here we have the priority lane, as you can see at the monitor. So this means that they are in the queue. So we have here cashier 1 and cashier 2. So who will be the one to get the query first? So for example, cashier 1 will get the PWD. So he will be called. So now P001 PWD has been called by the cashier. So he will be the one to queue. As you can see at the user side, so the color green appears because that means that they have been queued. So now, if the call process is done, then click done. So as you can see here, so the cashier 1 has done their transaction. So the user side of the PWD is going back to the select transaction since the PWD has done. So we still have 2 users remain. So P001 and P002 is on wait. So orange means on wait. And as you can see, the PWD, since the PWD has done, for example, this is another user. So if he wants to know the line of the cashier, so he will go to priority number entertain. So that means that there are 2 queues has not been done. So we will call. Since the priority number is the 001, so she will be the one to call first. For example, we call 01 and then calling process. And then for the cashier 2, so call the 002. So the process here is has been called. And as you can see at the monitor, so cashier 1 and cashier 2 has been called a queue. So in the user side, green means that the user has been queued. So we will call all the transaction. So we've then called the transaction, so we'll check done. And then for the cashier one, check done. So the queue has been done. So there is no users display on the monitor. And then in the user side, so they're back to the dashboard. So since we've done adding announcement, so we need to add limit. Just for an example, we will limit 10 users. But for now, we only have 3 users here. So we will just have an example of 10 limit only. So as you can see at the monitor, we limit only 10 users. So now, again, let's begin another query. Inquiry, payment, inquiry. So just for an example, this is a normal users though. Two normal users and then one PWD. So so I, which means inquiry. As you can see at the monitor, there are two users been queued but they are not been called. So here at the priority number, so as you can see, inquiry will be the first. But since we have PWD, so we will go to the priority lane. So she will be the one to call first. So since we have PWD at the priority lane, so inquiry and then 1 dash PWD. So since we have PWD, we will call it first. So now at the cashier, so 00 I001 dash P is the PWD has been called. So the queue process here is on queued. So since the the three users is on wait, so they still have to wait for their turn to be called. So since we call the PWD, we'll check it done. So now the PWD is going back to the dashboard. So since we have three priority number here, so we will call it first. For example, we call I001, which is inquiry. So as you can see at the time, so whoever the first one to has been called, so the first one to be entertained. And then cashier 1, cashier 2. So cashier 1 and cashier 2 is serving inquiry and payment. So 001 and 003. So now call and then done. Call and done. And then for example, cashier 1 will be called. The 002 as the recall. So recall means if there is some cases that the user is forgot to ask something or forgot to ask the payment has been not done yet. See, so the red color means recall. So once the recall is done, click done. So that's the use of the recall. For example, we still have to limit 10 users. So So 4 over 10. So we doesn't have limit yet. So we'll try again another user. So normal users. So that is 04, 05, and 06. So they are on wait call. So now, cashier 1 and cashier 2 will call them. So since we don't have any PWD, so we'll go to the priority number. So whoever the first one to be called, the status there is called. Then another. So called. And then done. And then done. So done. For example, the user P006 is not there. And then they call the queue. And then for example, cancel. So in the monitor, so the user is cancelled because the user is not there, then the cashier is called the next queue. So since the limit is still 10 and we have only user 7, so we need to add another users. So since I is the inquiry, so it will continue whoever the first user who do the inquiry. So 03, 04, and 05. So the cashier will call the user. So since we don't have any PWD, so let's go to the priority number. So whoever the first one to get and generate the IP address, so the first one to be called. And once it's done, so now we have 10 over 10 limit. So for example, we'll queue another. So as you can see, sorry, you exceed the limit of the query. So the user will no longer queue because the limit of the query is only 10 since they are on the 11 users. So for example, the time is not yet over and you still have the cashier still have a time. So for example, they need to add 2 users. So since we've done all the query, so sign out both 2 cashiers. As you can see at the monitor, there's no cashier do the query. So now let's go to the admin. So now we're in the admin side. For example, the day is over or the day is done. So the admin will receipt. So all the display in the monitor has been done. So now we are in the admin side. So receipt, that means that the limit and the announcement has been receipt. And then add cashier, so lately we showed that the admin add 2 cashiers. And then the report explains that how many percent that week has been queued. And then add, also the admin can add announcement and can add limit. So same as the cashier, they can also add announcement and add limit. So for example, we will see the report today. The report weekly. So now we have the report chart. So click on the weekly side. Next. So now you can see how many has been done on that week and how many has been cancelled on that week. So there are 4 PWDs, normal users, there are 19, and then the total of 23. Just for an example. Okay, as you can see as the percentage there, so how many percent has been queued from normal to PWD, and PWD has been cancelled and the normal has been done. So we have here weekly, monthly, and yearly. So since we do weekly query, so here's the proof that we do a weekly query, a percentage of the weekly. Since we don't have, since the month has not end, so it does not show the monthly report. So
the yearly.
So there's no monthly report yet. And the yearly. So there's no yearly report yet. So for the inquiry, weekly inquiry, current week. So as you can see, 6 PWD, normal, and then the percentage of the weekly inquiry report. And then since we don't have any monthly, so there's no display of the monthly report. Inquiry monthly report. Okay, so yearly. So there's no yearly inquiry report.
So thank you for watching.